My name is Diana Toledo. I am Senior River Program Director with River Network and one of the coordinators for the Urban Waters Learning Network, which is a network that we coordinate with Groundwork USA. And today we're happy to have the second session of our two-part series here with Earth Economics. So while just a little bit about the Urban Waters Learning Network, or actually if you can go back a slide, Olivia, just please take a minute to introduce yourself. Would be great to see who's in the room. If you can add your name, your organization, where you're calling from, and just a reminder that we'll be using the chat box for questions. So with that, the Urban Waters Learning Network, which is the host of this webinar, is a peer-to-peer network of urban waters practitioners who are working to conserve, restore, and revitalize our urban waterways and the communities around them. And so if you want to learn more, if you're new to the Learning Network, please take a look, urbanwaterslearningnetwork.org. Would love to have you join our efforts and be aware of other training sessions that we've got coming up. So again, today we have an amazing team. We had an incredible session, the first round of this session, and we'll drop the link into the chat for the recording of that here in a minute, which would be helpful if this is the first session you're joining. Take a minute to take a look at that first session for a great primer on environmental economics and ecosystem valuation. So today we have, again, our team, Olivia Molden and Carson Reisner from Earth Economics leading this session. And we are highlighting incredible community work that two of our network leaders have done. Dr. Angela Chalk is joining us from Healthy Community Services down in New Orleans. And we've got Matthew Shore from South Bronx Unite. And they have partnered with Earth Economics to apply a lot of what we'll be hearing about today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Olivia and just want to give you all a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiana. It's a pleasure to be doing the second webinar in this series. So just to give a quick overview of the agenda. So we'll start off with a quick recap of the first session. And then Carson has prepared a quick start guide, basically a way to help walk you through the steps of doing your own valuation and applying that. And then I'll pass it on to Dr. Chalk, who will share her experiences from New Orleans, and then Matthew in New York. And just want to say a big thank you to the Kresge Foundation, who makes a lot of this work possible. So with that, Carson, pass this on to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Olivia. So building on the first webinar where we introduced the basics of ecosystem service valuation, kind of like an ecological economics 101, if you will, the next few slides will focus on how you can move forward with conducting and communicating valuation. So as a quick recap, ecological economics has developed methods to assign value, often in monetary terms, to the benefits that humans receive from nature. This process is known as an ecosystem service valuation. And it's important to value nature because the impact that ecosystem services have are often invisible in economic decisions. Highlighting and showing that value can improve decision making and oftentimes strengthen the case for restoration and protection, community development, basically your projects. So as part of this, we put together a quick start guide. Next slide, Olivia. Perfect, thank you. So first and foremost, carefully record your project data as soon as possible. It's really important that you take detailed accounts of your projects and your spending. Second, determine your valuation needs. This will help influence the level of rigor for your analysis. Then you need to find a valuation service based on your needs. So for your application, this can range from existing open source valuation tools to engaging technical assistance providers like Earth Economics. Next, you must take time to interpret your results and have a good understanding of their specific meaning. Ideally, you would take the time to become familiar with the underlying methods used during the valuation as well. This will greatly support your communication efforts, enabling you to effectively highlight your project's impacts. Now we'll take some time to take a deeper look into each one of these steps, and we'll provide more information and context. So first up, recording project data. Whether you're in the early planning phases, in the middle of an installation, or you're in the post-project phase, it's never too late to carefully record your project data. We'll be placing a link in the chat to our sort of standard data needs template that we share with a lot of our project partners. Core data needs for valuation include identifying the features or ecosystem service types. So if you're doing a sort of green infrastructure installation, is it a bioretention? Is it rain gardens, etc.? We also need to know their quantity or size, the cost to install and maintain them, and any other data points that could be quantified, such as volunteers, which will help us look at the social impact of a project. If possible, keep track of the expected timeline or the years for the data, as it's good to track change over time as well. This is especially pertinent to the cost side of things. For example, was the project constructed in a single year over multiple years, or do operation and maintenance costs change over time? That really has a big impact, especially on our benefit cost analyses that we perform. So having the date or the schedule, if you will, of your project is super important. In many cases, our project partners are very early in the planning process or want to use valuation to help them with deciding which features to install. So kind of that pre-project phase. In these cases, partners may not have yet their projected construction or maintenance costs. To address any data gaps, we can perform extensive literature reviews to collect observed maintenance and cost estimates for various kinds of nature-based solutions, just as a start. So it's not a deal breaker if you don't have the detailed data, but it does require us to do a lot more research and make larger assumptions. So if you have it readily available, that's always best. Our next step is to determine valuation needs. While valuation can be brought in at any time of the project, the level of rigor of the valuation needed depends on its intended use and audience. At Earth Economics, we have identified 5 decision types that our work supports. First, raising awareness, securing funding, weighing benefits and costs, making land use decisions, and supporting policy. Each of these require different levels of effort and capacity, which have associated internal and external costs. For example, raising awareness, you can use more high-level or rapid valuation, whereas supporting policy can require more in-depth analysis and expertise. That being said, depending on data availability and the specific needs of the project, some of these can be higher lifts in capacity and costs, especially anytime primary research is required, such as deploying surveys. After determining your valuation needs, you can partner with an organization or try to find free online tools that match your team's experience and capacity to conduct the desired analysis. There are a range of online tools such as iTree that can value projects in urban, rural, and coastal regions. They can provide you with databases or national or global valuation literature like the Ecosystem Service Valuation Database, as well as the New York City Green Impact Calculator, which can support in project planning. To help support your efforts, we put together a database of existing valuation resources and literature. Some products require memberships or logins, while others are available as web-based tools or software downloads. Each resource requires various levels of technical capacity and training, so make sure you check that out first. For example, some tools you only need high-level project data to produce generalized outcomes. However, some are more sophisticated that need to be calibrated to your specific application, which might take more time and effort. So make sure that you look into the user manuals for these tools and gauge your technical ability. The table includes details such as the regions or tools available, the level of expertise needed, and the accessibility of the tool, and the links to the tools and supplemental resources. The link provided in the chat will direct you to the to the table of valuation tools. On the other hand, some tools and databases require partnerships with organizations like Earth Economics. We house multiple proprietary tools that value stormwater benefits of green infrastructure systems or urban heat island reduction mitigation. valuation of landscapes on multiple ecosystems, as well as small urban green infrastructure, as well as a massive ecosystem service valuation toolkit with over 9,000 peer-reviewed publications which we use to conduct our analyses across local, regional, watershed, and state level scales. We've also created bespoke tools that value specific locations and programs, such as that New York City Green Value Calculator that I mentioned before, which is hosted by South Bronx Unite. Another example includes the Backyard Habitat Certification Program tool, which was developed with the Columbia Land Trust in Portland, Oregon, as well as the Resilience Hub Benefit Cost Analysis tool, which was created for Seattle, the city of Seattle. So now let's move on to how we interpret results. There are multiple methods to value these ecosystem services. I'll try to keep this at a high level and attempt not to bore you with all the economic jargon, but examples of economic valuation methods include stated preference, which involves asking a group, such as a neighborhood residents, how much they value something, or in other words, their willingness to pay for different solutions or nature-based approaches. Using these responses, economists can begin to hint at the value of various non-market goods, such as ecosystem services provided by nature-based solutions. That's more of the high-level valuation. More rigorous methods include the revealed preference method, which use observed consumer preferences and spending to value a service. One revealed preference method is using the travel cost approach, where costs incurred to experience some service reflect the minimal value of that service. For example, a tourist traveling to a destination must value that resource at least as much as it costs to get there. The market value is the amount the good or service is charged on the open market, such as timber. It is the most direct way to value a good, although not all goods and services are explicitly bought or sold in markets, such as those services provided by nature. Cost-based approach are typically framed as avoided costs. For example, installing green stormwater infrastructure helps filter and store stormwater, thus lowering the pressure on existing infrastructure. This service can be valued based on the costs avoided that would be required if that to increase the capacity of that system. As you can see, the value of the service can be derived based on its ability to prevent additional future spending. I'm not saying that you all need to become intimately familiar with economic valuation methods, though it is extremely helpful to have a conceptual understanding of them so that you can better communicate your values and what they actually mean. This can help you effectively make the case for your project. So let's go into how to communicate the results. So here are a couple examples of some terms, their definition, and some example statements that you could use to communicate their value. So an ecosystem service valuation looks at the economic value provided by nature. An example of this would be our street trees provide $10,000 in air quality each year. But now let's think back to how we can interpret this. What does this $10,000 in air quality actually mean? Is it the value or the cost to filter or remove pollutants from the air? Or is it the avoided healthcare costs associated with a reduction in pollution densities within a neighborhood? Benefit cost analyses weigh the project benefits and costs to determine economic viability of a project. Some statements that you can make with this sort of analysis is for each dollar invested in our project returns $5 in benefits. Once again, keep in mind what this value actually represents. That's why I said it's important to have an underlying understanding of these economic valuation methods that we went over in the previous slide. Another common approach is an economic contribution analysis, and this maps how money circulates throughout an economy. Some example statements include recreation on conserved lands bring $100,000 in tax revenues and support 50 jobs within the local economy. We find that these types of statements are very persuasive to those that are concerned with their pocketbooks. So a lot of the times that ecosystem service values do not represent are kind of intangible dollars, but the economic contribution analysis is the hard money that you can see circulating in the economy. Finally, beneficiary mapping identifies and locates individuals that are impacted by a project. So, for example, you could say our project provides park access to 500 people and uh, goes in addressing our access to green space in our community. More than just the dollar values, we must be able to communicate what those dollars actually represent. So, like I was saying with the air quality example, what does that actually mean? So, just keep in mind that it's very important to understand the underlying message of those values. That will increase your confidence and ability to defend why your project is important. Now, I'll turn it over to Dr. Angela Chalk to talk about her experiences with ecosystem service valuations and a little bit more about their work.
Thank you so much, Carson. Oops, is it me or South Bronx?
No, it's you, Dr. Chalk. Just give me a minute.
Okay, sure.
Give me a minute.
Well, while we're waiting, let me give you some background information, everyone. Olivia and I met at a Kresge convening, and so you'll hear me speak about in the presentation about building trust and relationships. We were measuring our success in storage capacity. And after talking with Olivia at that convening, we realized that we needed to have a valuation of our projects from a different lens, and that was through the economic lens. Um, and so our relationship has begun. I like to say that I'm the honorary member for Earth Economics because everywhere I speak, I tell folks, how are you valuing your project? And so folks will say they have not a clue. I'm like, well, give these folks a call. Okay. Are you ready, Olivia? So I just have to disclose this. I have neither implicit or explicit biases or conflicts of interest or endorsements or receipt or compensation from any entity affiliated with promoting this event. And to the best of my knowledge, this disclosure is true. And so let's look at what we're going to discuss today. So I'll let you know a little bit about Healthy Community Services, who I am, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation with understanding the uniqueness of your nature-based solution. And I want you to understand what that really means, because each project is unique in its own, and I'll go over those factors that will determine how your projects are unique. And then green assets have value, and more and more municipalities and even lenders are starting to understand that. And then again, building those trusting relationships that not only does Olivia and I have, but also with Deanna. And so when you're at a conference, you never know who you're sitting next to. So speak to that person. And you may end up with a good partnership and friendship out of just simply sitting next to somebody. And then the call to action, what is it that you're going to do? And so think about that as I give you all the presentation. What is it that you are going to do? What is the impact that you're going to make on your community and in your organizations? All right. So Healthy Community Services is a 501c3 organization. We're based here in the 7th Ward section of New Orleans, and our areas of focus are urban ag, stormwater management. My research has been in the urban heat island effect. Because New Orleans, and people don't typically realize that New Orleans is a coastal city, our work also extends to coastal resiliency, mitigation, and adaptation strategies. And what that means is that we're connecting urban settings to our rural settings. So if you visit New Orleans, the eastern section of our city is actually marshland. There's a wildlife habitat that's out there. And so we need to make those connections of how those of us who live in the city with our coastal wetlands. And then we do all of that at the intersection of public health and climate health. My background is in public health. So Olivia, next slide. And so all the pictures that you see here in this presentation are real. So they come from around this area. And so this is one of the times that I was out visiting what we call the Great Wall of Louisiana that protects New Orleans from storm surge. And so roll wave. And so if you know me, you know that I don't even like my food touching. So to be in the marsh and pick up an alligator and actually touching it, and there's no rubber band. The boat captain just went right there and picked it up, and I was like, "Oh, hey, let me touch that." So I there we go. We have so I'm intimate with the work. That's all I can say. Um, I am also a visiting adjunct professor at Tulane at the C. Scott Weatherhead School of Public Health. And in that role, we connect the academic world to the community work that we're doing. I am a proud alumni of Dillard University, now LSU and the Virginia University of at Lynchburg, and I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So if anyone is out there that belongs to the D9, send me up a heart or a thumbs up. So that's so let's get into it. So extraordinarily unique. And you need to understand when I talk about the uniqueness of your nature-based solution is that it's based on your design, your function, the location, and the services provided. And those designs can be bioswales, rain gardens, planter boxes. The function can be your either infiltration, retention, or detention. And the location, it can be private or public properties in any size and scope. And so you don't have to jump off the deep end like I did with creating a large scale project that we have now. But the picture to your left is our first capture of stormwater, and it worked. So, but most importantly, the services provided, whether it's a return on investment or eco service benefits or public health benefits, you need to know what that is. So here's a little question. True or false? Is this a green asset? So you all can put that in the chat. Is this a green asset? Go ahead, put it in the chat. True or false? Okay. All right. Okay. Next slide, Olivia. Go, keep it coming. The answer is true. And how we know that it's true, the Louisiana Department of Transportation valued that property at $28,000. And so HCS, or Health and Community Services, holds the joint use agreement for that. Phase one of the project was $65,000, which was funded by the Institute for Sustainable Communities. And then phase two just recently opened late last year with our partnership with Groundworks New Orleans, and they secured funding from the Bezos Earth Fund and Groundworker USA in the amount of $500,000. This project was put together with all philanthropic support. There are no tax dollars involved in that. In fact, we actually paid the state to lease that property. And the city of New Orleans was responsible for maintaining it and mowing the grass. So they don't even do that anymore. And when I say we, I mean Healthy Community Services, along with our great partner, Todd Reynolds at Groundwork New Orleans, we maintain that property at an estimated annual maintenance cost of $12,000. So we share that amount. And so when I was listening to the presentation before, I'm like, oh yeah, we do all of that. So next slide, Olivia. And so this particular bioswale measures 200 feet by 60 feet. It is called the Vision to Reality Stormwater Management Park because it was the vision of the residents of the 7th Ward, that made this park become a reality. So working with community, deciding where to place this and understanding what nature-based solutions, that's a whole nother presentation on how we got there. But this is reflective of what residents said they wanted to see in our community. And I'm also a part of the community. I am a fourth generation resident of the 7th Ward. But not only does this stormwater management park, and we call it V2R for short, it manages water that protects the immediate residents. It also protects the residents of St. Bernard and Plaquemines Parish because this site is on a hurricane evacuation route. It phase 2 hosts a weather station, solar powered hub and operations with a linear path and seating. And then it has become really a community project because groundwater level testing has been done, and it is a designated site by both Del Torres and Black and Beach. And so pay attention to this. When we talk about functionality, those 4 things that I talked about: design, function, location, return on investment. This is a rain event where we received 9 inches of water within 1 hour, and that's eastbound on North Claiborne Avenue with no nature-based interventions available. Claiborne Avenue, according to Dr. Campanella at Tulane University, is at 0 elevation. So that's where we're even. Next slide. This is westbound, the same event on North Claiborne. The only difference is that the runnel enters into the Vision to Reality stormwater management site, and we are on the side of North Claiborne that is at where the elevation for our city begins to decrease because we're moving towards Lake Pontchartrain. Next slide. And so when we talk about green assets, the World Economic Forum has stated that by 2030, they're projecting that the green industry will exceed $7 trillion annually. $7 trillion annually. And all I'm saying is that can my organization get 1% of that 7 trillion? And think about what the impact will be for your community and your organizations. Let that number sit with you for a while. $7 trillion. We've already passed 5 trillion, but by 2030, and that's in 4 years, an industry will have that much of an impact globally. $7 trillion. Next slide. And so I talked earlier about building trust. The first thing is wherever it is you're going to develop an intervention, you must talk with the residents and see what they would like to have in their communities. Don't just hover in and say, this is what we think you need to have. And I would refer you to Rosa Gonzalez's community engagement model, community engagement model of engagement, their spectrum, and how to get communities involved with that. We say elected officials and decision makers, but it's that secretary at the front desk that will keep you from the election officials and decision makers. So get to know that person so that you can get in to have the meeting. And once you build those trusting relationships, so what that means that whatever it is you say you're going to do, you need to back it up. But most importantly, compensate people for their time and their expertise, whether that's residents or your peers, because now we're at the point where we want our valuations done on all of our nature-based solutions. And so Earth Economics knows that they're automatically a line item in whatever proposals or grants that we're working with. And so make sure that you have a core team around you, and then work with your other peers. I don't do workforce development or economic mobility. Groundworks New Orleans does that. And so we help with providing we partner, I'm not going to say help, we partner with providing opportunities for the men and women that are working toward economic mobility by creating these developments of nature-based solutions. So review the characteristics of unique nature-based solutions. It's going to be your design, how it functions, the location, and the services that are provided. What's the call to action? Where will you position your community and your organization? And you have to do something. This is phase 2 opening with our state senator for District 5 in New Orleans and Senator Royce Duplessis. And whenever I call on the senator for whatever his office can provide services for, he does that, as well as our council person and the Louisiana Department of Transportation. So those relationships are important in building trusting relationships with the people that can move whatever your endeavors are. And then do something, people. And that's me. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Chalk. It's
Mhm.
such a pleasure to have you, and it's just been wonderful to work with you since I think it's
Yes,
2019.
I've seen you through 2 babies now.
That's true. Yeah, no, it's a wonderful partnership. So yeah, please share any questions you have for Dr. Chalk in the chat. And then also, I think Hannah, if you could share a quick poll as we transition to hear from Matthew Shore from South Bronx Unite.
Hey, hello, hello. Nice to meet you all, and it's great to be a part of this conversation and to be followed by Dr. Chalk. So my name is Matthew Shore. Actually, if we can go back to the first slide. I'm Director of Planning and Development at South Bronx Unite. Thank you, Olivia. And for those who are interested in the work that we do, please feel free to visit our social media at South Bronx Unite, or I'll drop it in the chat here. That's our website as well, southbronxunite.org. And what do we do? Similar to Dr. Chalk's organization, we focus on environmental justice. You may be familiar with the Bronx. For those who aren't, we're in New York City, one of the 5 boroughs in New York City. And we're talking, when you think about the South Bronx, you think about the birthplace of hip hop, salsa, rich legacy in the community. We are characterized by immigrants, particularly, especially from Latin America, from the Caribbean, from Africa. And it's definitely a working class community. And in the South Bronx, that's a big area for those who are familiar. We are specifically in Mott Haven and Port Morris. That's our catchment area. So our area is around 60,000 residents. And going down the street, 138th Street in Mott Haven, you see a vibrant community of families and such. However, there are deep-rooted systemic issues that affect the neighborhood. Unfortunately, a big part of our catchment area is in what is considered the U.S.'s financially poorest congressional district. And then when you think about the built environment, as we just saw recently in New Orleans, that has a direct impact on the quality of life of community members here. And what I mean by that is we are, engulfed by several highways, and we have a lot of what folks in our field would identify as pollutant infrastructure. So think waste transfer stations, peaker power plants. We have 4 of those. And so all of this pollutant infrastructure, and on the flip side, not a lot of green space. When you look at a city parks map, you'll see different green spaces in the neighborhood, different community gardens, different parks. But we always tell people the only real park in our neighborhood is St. Mary's Park that actually has natural green spaces. And that park is simply not enough to serve the entire community and to really make any kind of dent in the air quality issues that we see in our neighborhood. And on that topic, unfortunately, to no surprise, we have a significant air quality issue, um, which, from all the pollution, all the pollutant infrastructure. And as a result, we often say 1 in 5 children in the South Bronx suffer from asthma. That is a fact. And we hate to mention it in different webinars and presentations. It's a really sad statistic to share, but it's what we have to reckon with. And so it's our responsibility as an environmental justice, community-based advocacy organization to address these things. And to that end, I can mention all the different programs and campaigns we do. But for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on the data analysis work that we do in close partnership with different academic institutions, and especially with Earth Economics, who has been pivotal to our work. We can't do anything with data and advocacy, as many of you may know. And we can go to the next slide. And so when you think about our built environment, one important thing to mention is that we largely, despite being situated on a peninsula that's surrounded by different water bodies, namely the East River in the east, the Harlem River on the west. And despite being surrounded by these water bodies, the community largely does not have access to that waterfront. They have to go to Manhattan, they have to go to Brooklyn. There's an island just south of our community called Randall's Island that's also part of Manhattan to enjoy these beautiful spaces, which studies show lead to better mental health outcomes, lower levels of stress. And of course, we know how important coastlines and waterfronts are for flood and resilience, climate resilience, et cetera. And so what we at South Bronx Unite do is we organize community members, everyday New Yorkers, everyday Bronxites who are impacted by issues, who care about creating more green spaces to improve the air quality, to improve flood and resilience. We bring them together to form community envision plans, one of which is displayed on the slide, and it is known as the Mott Haven Port Morris Waterfront Plan. And so this plan seeks to reveal 7 different locations along our peninsula's waterfront, again, from the East River to the Harlem River, and to provide residents with that long-awaited, desperately needed access and recreational spaces. It seeks to create interconnected natural green spaces to handle the flooding issues. We are in a high-risk flood zone, and a lot of people wouldn't think that because we're more north in the city. We're not, directly, next to the ocean, as our friends in Queens and Brooklyn are. But nonetheless, when Hurricane Sandy came through, or Tropical Storm Sandy, I should say, we received and were impacted by significant flooding issues. And so we are fortunate that through advocacy, this waterfront plan has been prioritized by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Open Space Master Plan. However, the work continues. We are continuing to try our best to activate our first waterfront infrastructure project. It's been years of organizing and struggle. Recently, with the EPA Community Change Grant, we had an excellent opportunity. And moving forward, when different funding opportunities close, we look for new doors to open. And so Earth Economics really helped us to quantify what are the economic benefits of activating these 7 different locations in the waterfront. And that data is something that we share in so many meetings with elected officials, with governmental agencies on the city and state level. When we do these important grant applications like the EPA Community Change Grant and are working with technical assistance providers, this information is critical. And we were able to understand, that okay, it would cost around $125 million to activate the full waterfront plan, but on a yearly annual basis, thank you, Olivia, we would, garner approximately $259 million in economic benefits. And we're talking things like as displayed on the screen, construction jobs, economic activity, et cetera. And also, I mentioned flooding earlier. I mean, think about the savings that different public and private owners, landowners, property owners would save by flood and resilience infrastructure investments. It's super critical, and these are more benefits listed on the screen here. $248 million generated by parks, $7.2 million from tree plants. And I hope as I list these things off, we're collectively manifesting these benefits to come into the community. They will come. They will come. Green infrastructure, pervious payments, etc. Next slide. And so not only are we using the data from Earth Economics in these meetings with the big wigs, we could say, we are also using them on the grassroots level. And so these are two recent pictures that I'm happy to share with you all. An awesome community member of ours who is a part of what we call our local action committee. That's just our general community body membership group that meets on a monthly basis. It allows people in the neighborhood to get involved in our campaigns. His name is David Rosales, and actually he also helps our communications work, and more on him in a bit. And so, yeah, I mean, what you see here is on the left, a community meeting in January. On the right, a community meeting in February. And these residents came together to talk about this opportunity to activate this underutilized plot of land that's around 16,000 to 17,000 square feet. It's right around the corner from our office. And it's sort of an overgrown sidewalk that has turned into basically another vacant lot in the neighborhood, and who immediately saw that as an opportunity for all sorts of things, green infrastructure, a potential space for the many dog owners in the neighborhood. There's no dog park in the area. And as a sort of, yeah, just another green space with more trees, a tree planting opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And so these meetings were a way to collect feedback on what the spaces, how the spaces could be maximized, but also to use the exciting new tool that we created in the last year and a half with Earth Economics called our New York City Green Impacts Calculator. And so we, like many of you advocacy organizations on this call, are involved in coalitions. And one of the main coalitions that we're involved in is known as the New York City Community Land Initiative. And this coalition is comprised of groups across the city who care about using underutilized land, which is often public land. And, we say reclaiming those properties that are underutilized for community benefit, whether it's for environmental benefits, whether it's for the development of truly affordable housing, whether it's to create community hubs that offer community programming and services, healthy third spaces in an area that lacks them, whether it's preserving and keeping local small businesses in a neighborhood. This is the work that this coalition is tasked with doing. And so what we did with this coalition is create a green space equity committee for groups across the city who want to do reclaim land for community benefit, specifically economic benefits. And so through that committee work, we realized that we needed data, of course. And so we took the opportunity to call our friends at Earth Economics to create a tool that would allow people to zoom in to their respective neighborhood, not just in the Bronx, but in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and to uh, be equipped with data that would enable folks to understand the economic benefits that could be derived from activating small spaces, medium spaces, large spaces, um, whether it's pocket parks, community gardens, parks, etc. And this tool allows you to really, in a user-friendly way, customize, really provide sort of detailed analysis for what you want that future space to be. And so you can add, how many trees do you want? How many rain barrels? And by the way, I could share a link to this tool in the chat for those who want to dive deeper. And so going back to the two community meetings in January and February of this year that David Rosales organized, they were able to use this tool to manifest what the community wants for this 16,000 square foot underutilized space. And people were really amazed and excited about the tool. And you had different, community groups that across the city who actually attended those calls as well. And we're seeing this tool. And the intention is to continue to work with Earth Economics and their team this year to make sure that people across New York are aware about this tool and how to use it and can benefit from using the tool for their respective place-based campaigns. We want a lot of people to use this tool. We want to, promote it on social media, do some awesome email blast. And I have to shout out Natalie, who's been meeting with us from Earth Economics, who is, helping us do that work alongside Olivia and Angela for helping us with this tool. And next slide. And thank you. I'll turn it back to the team at Earth Economics. My contact info is there. I will share the link to the NYC Green Impacts Calculator in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Deanna shared it. So take a look at that calculator. And yeah, thanks so much, Matthew, for going over your work. And we love working with you all and are looking forward to promoting more green stormwater infrastructure projects in New York. So I think we just have a couple more slides here before we get into a Q&A. Deanna, do you want to just share any upcoming events?
Happy to. Yeah, somebody's going to drop the link again into the evaluation link. If you don't mind opening that up before the room closes so you can give us some feedback, as well as registration information we have 2 upcoming sessions next week. Avoiding water shutoffs. This is also the second of a 2-part series. And if you go to that link, you can find the recording to the first one, as well as a state policy showcase showcasing a couple of funding programs that states have passed to support water projects and water infrastructure. And also just a reminder that River Rally registration is open, and we'd love to see you there. So please take a look at that link, and would love to see you in San Antonio, May 11th through the 14th in a couple of months. I think that's it, Olivia, if we
Yeah,
want to
that's
get to the
it.
questions.
Right. So we have a couple minutes for questions here. I can go back through the chat as well, but please feel free to pass along any questions you have for the group.
Olivia, I was documenting a few in the chat that didn't get answered.
Okay,
There
thank
was
you.
one from a participant named Cecilia who was asking, what is the funding model to work with a resource like Earth economics?
Mhm.
And maybe to Dr. Chalk and Matthew, how and when do you prioritize this necessary expense?
Yeah, just briefly before I pass it on, we're very thankful to have funding from the Kresge Foundation for over 10 years now that allows us to provide technical assistance to community-based groups. And so, that usually gets us started with a lot of these projects. So we're very thankful for that sort of funding model. But that being said, there are many ways to include us in your work. I think Dr. Chalk mentioned, writing us into grants, which we're so thankful for. So just reach out to us and, explain your need, and we can come up with something to help you out. But yeah, Dr. Chalk and Matthew, any insights here?
You said that, and that's the significance of having and building trusting relationships, because it's mutual, because you may not your organization may not have money at the time that you need something, but if I have a trusting relationship with you, then I can say, okay, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, I'll handle it. And Olivia has done that on several occasions with Earth Economics, and along with the funding that they get from Kresge. Now, that also means that I can't keep going to Olivia's bucket, dipping it and expending her good nature. That also means that when I have funding, I can then come back and say, hey, how much does this cost? And we're going to write this in as a line item in our budgets, and we do that. There is not a grant that we don't write at Healthy Community Services that we don't include the valuation as well as our metrics for monitoring our success, because funders want to know, why should I give you money? What's going to be the benefit? What's the return on investment? I'm still paying my college professors return on investment for the knowledge that they've imparted on me. And so I want you to think about it in that lens, that you have a fiduciary or moral duty to pay back the people who help you to move your agenda along. Matthew?
Yes, I will just be very brief. I think Olivia and Dr. Chalk summed it up perfectly. Yeah, I mean, the time is always now to prioritize data. So we take this work seriously. And, as Olivia mentioned, when, relevant grant opportunities present themselves, we, make sure to consider what are the different technical assistance providers that we could work with to do the work justice. And so here in New York, different opportunities like City Parks Foundation, et cetera, has been able to, fund, some of the work that we've been able to do with Earth Economics, along with funding from our favorite Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, specifically through the People, Parks, and Power Initiative, P3, which is a national initiative. I could share more about that in the chat. Um, yes, back to you, Olivia.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And yeah, just reach out to us with any questions about that. But yeah, at any phase of the project, you can bring in these sorts of metrics. Um, let's see, are there any other questions in the chat in the next 5 minutes?
The only other question I think I saw in the chat that wasn't answered, and I believe this was when Dr. Chalk was presenting, a participant named Morgan had asked or suggested that they would love to learn more about how local park districts or city governments are involved with these projects. And I feel like we've talked a little bit about that since the question was asked. But if folks have more to add, that was a question in the chat as well.
Honestly, they just leave me alone. the city, we had to go through an engineering study and get approval from DOTD. But once we entered into that joint use agreement, the we have full control of that site. And what that means is that we pay a lease to um the Louisiana Department of Transportation. It's a joint use agreement, and it's different from a cooperative endeavor agreement because with a cooperative endeavor agreement, that company or that entity still manage control of it. The Department of Transportation has turned over control of that property to Healthy Community Services. And so we manage it. We have insurance on it, and we operate on under that joint use agreement. And so there's the difference. And Matthew, as I heard you talk about your future site, I would strongly recommend that you start to build relationships with DOT, with New York DOT, and enter into a joint use agreement. You'd be surprised when you ask, people will say yes, especially if it's not going to cost them anything. It did not cost Louisiana DOTD anything but to sign papers and say yes. And then finally, get an advocate at that level, whatever level it is, I mean, state, federal, or local level, to advocate for them to give you permission to enter into that JUA. And do what it is you say you're going to do. Be responsible.
I'll quickly just piggyback by mentioning, we've been fortunate to, in the last couple of years, develop some good contacts with the New York City Department of Transportation, and our goal is to achieve, official plaza designation for these different underutilized sites, which could unlock a whole nother level of support from city government via funds, via things like maintenance, street furniture, you name it, infrastructure improvements. And it's a step-by-step process, as you would imagine. And we are in talks about to that extent. We're in talks about hosting some events, as a pilot, and then, as an in-between from the pilot events to the eventual and hopeful, plaza designation, we would hope to pursue a maintenance agreement. And so we're fortunate that these conversations are even moving, and more to come.
Okay, any final questions? Okay, well, I think Deanna, you just mentioned the spreadsheet of tools. So our colleague Abby put this very helpful sort of repository of public ecosystem services valuation or general valuation tools available out there. So you can use the filters to see what region they're applicable to, and detailed notes on what the tool can provide, and a link to accessing that. So if you're looking for, I think like Carson mentioned, that sort of early awareness raising or just getting interested in valuation, check out some of these tools, see what's best suited to your needs at the time. I will mention, a lot of these do take quite a bit of capacity on your end. Some of them are more user-friendly than others. And I think, just as Carson mentioned, always be sure to check the sort of data sources and just assumptions of where the information is coming from. But please take a look. We've got the Green Impacts Calculator in here. Love to see more site-specific tools, because it is, as you can see, most of them are at the national or global scale, and it's so much more impactful when you can really get into the local data and show those values at a more local level. So yeah, check it out. Send us an email with any questions, and just we appreciate your time here today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Chalk. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.